Cha-chung. This is Stephen. No, it's always a choice. It's presented by superintendents to school boards. School boards have to vote on it. Now, the thing about that I've found out that once it's in place, it's really hard to get it back out. Generally, a superintendent has a block of supporters on the school board as a rule, and then the other block that do not want it cannot counter the block, the superintendent's block. There's 2 communities in Texas that the parents have been fighting for 3 years to get it out. 3 years, going and logically giving explanations. We don't want it here is this reason, and this reason, and this reason. They're not with pitchforks and whatever. They're doing this in a very an open and respectful manner, and yet the superintendent circumvents them every time. And he has that block of support there that they can't get past. So they're having to vote out school board members who support this to get rid of the superintendent, to get rid of CSCOPE. Now, ask me, that's what I can't understand. If I was a superintendent who really cared about children, and the first day that I heard that most of them had 50 as a result of a test, good or bad, CSCOPE, not CSCOPE, I'd be down there asking, what in the heck happened? Tell me, teachers, tell me what happened. Is the material not good? Are the kids acting up today? What's going on? Do you have the flu? Whatever. When all of them are doing this, tell me we need to do this. But they don't seem to be upset at the fact that the kids are failing this test over and over. And I was told that from the beginning. The superintendents are not upset because these kids are failing these CSCOPE tests over and over. And I couldn't get it, and I couldn't get it, and I couldn't get it until one school board meeting in North Texas that I went in. And they had about 5 parents that had stood up and said, we want CSCOPE out. They just lost 18 kids pulled out because of CSCOPE, which actually they lost more money than what they paid for CSCOPE over that year for kids withdrawn. So the superintendent had brought in this ringer. I called him a ringer. And he was saying, oh, I'm not for CSCOPE or against CSCOPE, but let me just show you what your kids are going to have to do in this new world of technology of which you old fogies don't know anything about. Of course, he didn't say that last part, but basically that was implied. So he goes through this, and he's showing these parents, you know, the technology and that information is replicating itself so many times, blah, 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 and going on and basically scaring them if they don't have the latest in technology and they're not doing this and they're not using that higher thinking skill first before they do basic knowledge, then they're not with it. And he said, and you know who doesn't like CSCOPE the most? Those A students. As if he was demonizing them because they're no longer making A's anymore. We're making them think. We're giving them rigor. Now, he didn't explain to you that the reason the A students are not making A's anymore is because they're having tests with questions on it that they're not taught. Or they have questions, and you'll look at every CSCOPE test that's out there, the objective test versus what's called a subjective test. Objective test is like the capital of Texas is. It's right or wrong. You know it or don't. If you don't know it, I'll teach it to you. What is the most beautiful city in Texas? Then you're going to get a bunch of answers, right? Subjective to that descriptive of the most beautiful. So you have a subjective answer. If you don't give me my answer that I want as a subjective test writer, then you got that wrong. But the other thing is, and this is the hardest thing for us to even think about, because when it was told to me, I said, oh, surely not. Yes, no, no. Then I'd always doubt myself on this one. And then one of the teachers was on Glenn Beck, and she mentioned it, and I said, okay, then I'll look into it. And she told him on his program, she said that this is not about those lessons in particular. It's about data mining. That's where the big bucks are. If you know what the capital of Texas is or isn't, then I can say you're smart, you're not smart, informed or not informed, okay? But if I am keeping data on what your perspective is of your opinion, your subjective opinion of certain things are, then I can sell that subjective opinion to someone else, and that is the data is collected on these kids as they take these tests. Now, you say, okay, that's too far-fetched, Ms. Mac. You're out in la-la land on this one. And I was for a while, but then I came back. I then looked in to see the computer company that did this from 2006 to 2011. Excuse me, 2012. They didn't have a contract with him to begin with. Okay, now this is a multi-million-dollar deal, no contract. He is one person, lives in a house in a rural area of New York. And he's got all the data on all the kids of Texas and all the teachers that are using this program. And you say, okay, well, that's kind of, okay, they have home companies. Well, to look at how many people and how many computers you have to keep up with all of this in one house. And we've had the satellite picture of it. And there's no commercial area around there. Then we looked into where he's from and what he's doing, and some of those things would scare you. But the thing that got me was that I saw that he had somebody assist him at one of the conferences. And I put it, okay, I've not heard that name before. And then just left it over. And then somebody asked me about it. I said, okay, I'll check him out too. He's just an assistant. Well, he was his tech assistant at one conference, and nobody mentioned this guy's name. And this guy is helping the guy that has the computer that has your kid's data. Okay, so he's a tech guy. He's an assistant tech guy, probably a nerdy tech guy. Okay, data control type thing. He owns his own company worth $5 million, and it's a data mining company. And he's assisting the person who has the control of what's going on in the state of Texas. And then there are other parts to that we. Oh, by the way, had somebody look in. He's never voted in the United States. I don't know if that makes a difference, but it was suspicious to me. Okay, close up with Stephen. Stephen was kicked out of kindergarten school at a church kindergarten and brought to me. In my learning lab, the school that I had to do research on accelerated learning, I had taught his older sister years before, so they brought him to me. And he has what's called Asperger's syndrome. And Asperger's syndrome children are exceptionally bright, but they have a tendency to not be socially adept to doing gracious things. He calls me up on my birthday every year and tells me how old I am. And so I said, Stephen, women don't particularly care to hear how old they are when you get my age and it's on their birthday. And he said, but Ms. Mac, that's how old you are. Cut and dry. Stephen then is with me for a number of years, and then he leaves, and then he comes back because he's kicked out somewhere else because he's done something heart of gold, love anything. He used to spend his money to buy somebody to buy a lotto ticket so he could build Ms. Mac a retirement home, which I guess I looked that old. But anyway, he had this heart of gold. He comes in, and his parents are staunch conservatives, Republicans. Stephen is liberal, 10-year-old. And he's with me at the time that Clinton is in office. And he says, Miss Mac said, I know everybody's picking on Clinton because he and that Monica girl. And I said, well, Stephen, there's some problems there. And he said, I'm going to write him a letter. I said, well, okay, that'll be fine. He said, I think he's doing the best he can. And I said, well, that would be nice if you write him a letter. And then he said, but you taught me to do research first. I said, yes, sir, I did. So this kid for 2 weeks researched, and then he brought in his letter, and I told his parents to please make a copy before it's mailed off. And here's Stephen, this kid, written this letter. Dear President Clinton, I am your friend. I know you've goofed up some. In fact, you've goofed up a lot. And here's how you've goofed up. Number 1, number 2, and he listed 25 things that Clinton had done wrong. But I like you because I'm your friend. Love, Stephen. So just picture at what the other end who opens that letter up and reads that. We're coming from Texas, I imagine, they gave them a heart attack. He now is much older and is now leaning more on the conservative. Right. So we have a place to go if you want to look at some of the lessons at CSCOPE.review.com, or you can just Google CSCOPE or CSCAM on YouTube and see some things. And then the next one, please. The next one. And then you can go back to your 3-prong approach. If you like CSCOPE and you know that you want it in your schools, then please give the reasons why. Be able to explain why. If you are thinking about it, or if you want to support it, if you are a school administrator or you're a teacher that likes it, then be prepared to tell us what social constructivism is about it and who has done it, because that's a theory. And support it with facts. And this has never been field tested, so please ask for that field test data from the very beginning. Then ask your principal, if you're not for it, ask your principal, superintendent, school board member, are you a supporter of progressive education? If you're a progressive thinker, then please admit that to us. What is social constructivism? Have you taught using it? What is the zone of proximal development? What paper do I sign to opt out of CSCOPE and obtain direct instruction with vetted, expert-based, anchored, and transparent resource material? What paper do I sign to prohibit my child's information and test answers from becoming a part of data mining? We need to ask that. And I don't think that's unreasonable. Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. I had someone the other day, how do you unlearn something? These are our children. We only have one shot at this. We need to get it right. Thank you.